Hi folks, welcome back to my channel. My channel is called You Think, and on this channel I want you to reason and think, ask your own questions and draw your own conclusions. In this video we're going to look at a challenge that was laid out by Simon and Dan, and I'm going to use my training as an artist, as a cinematographer and photographer to answer those questions, how I understand light and shadow. So let's listen to Simon and Dan, and then I'm going to show you a few things, but I want you to reason and think and draw your own conclusions and put to test what you see.
This is possible on a flat earth.
Y'all check this out. Like this cloud that the sun is hiding behind has broke through. Looks like a spotlight. And then it carries over. All the way over to here.
Answers on a postcard, flat earthers.
Look, as an artist, to master drawing and painting, an artist has to understand perspective, light and shadows, and that how these things demonstrate our reality. So think of it like this, that light and shadow, they paint the world that we live in, and we need to understand them. So, in Simon and Dan's video clip, there are two things we're going to look at, shadow and crepuscular rays, or light beams, light rays. So, we know the earth is flat and that the sun orbits above the earth simply because of simple things. If you're in the north or in the south, shadows in the north can only ever point north and shadows in the south can only ever point south. This doesn't happen. It tells you you're not living on a ball. Right? And the shadows, for example, at sunset, where must the shadows be? Well, if you're on a ball, the shadows must be above you. Right? The horizon would, the shadow of the horizon would be above you. This doesn't happen. The shadows are always on the floor. Right? So at sunset, the shadows are always on the ground. Tells you you're not living on a ball. So what we're going to look at is going to answer Simon and Dan's challenge. So we know that the spirit level is level in this illustration. We see the sun rise, it comes towards you, but its height above the ground is constant. So due to perspective, it appears as if the sun is rising and that the sun is setting. Now we're going to focus on the next thing, which is the actual shadows. So if I have a planar surface here in front of me, the photographer, look at the shadows. Look at where your shadows are. It tells you that the light isn't far away. The light is above the clouds. Buildings cast shadows on other buildings, but the height of those shadows never exceeds the height of that building. It tells you that the light source, the sun, is always above those buildings. Because if the sun dropped below, then the horizon must rise up and those buildings would be higher than you. So it's how do we see these shadows? Well, they elongate at sunset. So they will taper off towards the horizon, like what we see here. This is exactly how we see light, and as the sun moves away, it gets darker. At this angle, the shadows are parallel. But if we change our position, same buildings, then they're going to taper. That's due to perspective. It's how the human eye works. Nevertheless, the sun, the height of the sun is constant. So look at the shadows. Now, look at this image, right? This image is telling you the truth. Light and shadows painting a reality. We need to look and understand what that reality is. We are not living on a spinning ball. So at sunset, all you need to do is go stand by a wall and look at your shadow. Your shadow will tell you that we are not living on a ball. That the sun is simply moving away from you. Your shadow will elongate and then it will get dark. So if you're in a studio and you put the light on the ground, then your shadow would rise above your head. This never happens in the real world. It tells you that we are not living on a ball. Now let's look at crepuscular rays. light beams. We look at this image, we see the light beams in front, underneath, and at the back. So is the sun 195 million kilometers above your head? No, it's just above the clouds. So let's analyze this image. Where is the light source? So here's the light rays. We see them in the front, we see them underneath, and we see them at the back. The light beams are telling you exactly where the sun is. So from your perspective here, when you look at this, the sun is not millions of kilometers away. Look, if what they are saying is true, you are living on a ball, and the sun was 195 million kilometers in front of you, the light rays would all have to be parallel across the entire horizon. Then you have to ask, well then, you're seeing the left side. If the sun sets at the equator, you see the left and the right. How can you see around the curve of the ball? You cannot. So the sunset's telling you, and the light rays are telling you that the sun is local. And if you look carefully and you pay attention, you'll see that we are simply being lied to. They will say that the light is bending around the ball. Well, if that's true, then the shadow's in the wrong place. So they can lie, but the light and the shadows will tell you the truth. You need to pay attention. Human beings can lie, but the light and the shadow won't lie to you. If we understand how light and shadow paints our world, the light and shadow, they're not lying to you. So many artists, for example, like William Turner, a brilliant artist, look how he painted. He's painting the sun and the moon, both above the horizon. The reflections are in the water. Tells you that we're not living on a ball. Right, so if you see this, right, it's just a shadow from the clouds. Right? If I turn it upside down, and I show you this, it's the same thing. Right? Do you understand? It's the same thing. So the crepuscular rays would taper towards the horizon. And if there's enough water vapor in the air, if the air is dense enough, we'll see really long crepuscular rays. So if I turn around and look to the horizon on the opposite side, the light rays would taper like this. And this is exactly what we see. The light rays would taper both ends towards the horizon. So look, I'm not a big fan of the education system. It's my personal opinion that mankind has gone into a decline, into what I call Masonic madness. Because the education system is controlled by Freemasonry. Same as religion and everything else, politics, same thing. So, as far as I'm concerned, my personal opinion is that the education system is just indoctrination into a religious cult of Freemasonry. They want you just to nod your head, and if you nod it enough, your brain will go to sleep. So I want you to reason and think. Right? I mean, if I wanted to join a religion, then I'll join whatever religion I choose. But don't come and whitewash your religious nonsense and then palm it off as science, because it's not the truth. Right? Light. Right. So whenever let's look a bit about light and what we can learn from light. Remember, look at where the horizon is and look where the shadows are. So, let there be light. And there was light. That's how we see light, and I'm going to prove it to you. So they will say in the education system, no, that light travels. Right? Speed of light. But it's complete garbage. And I'm going to prove it to you. We're going to look at a few things, and we're going to ask questions. Because it's going to help us, if we understand this, it's going to help us to answer Simon Dan. It's going to help our world to become more clear. And you'll see clearly that we're being lied to. Simply by asking the right questions and looking for the answers. Right? The answers that they give you Well, it's a lie. So, as an artist, right, I look at the light and I look at the shadows. And if you can see they're lying, they're going to call you a conspiracy theorist. Well, I don't care. The point is, I can see that they're lying. So, if you set up a photographic studio and you want to understand light, my advice to you is go read Genesis from 1 to 19. That on day 1, God created the light, right? And it says that the earth was without shape or form. So the shadows, right, the light and dark doesn't come from the shape of the earth. It's got nothing to do with it. We have light. In the day we live in, light. This was before the sun was created. When you build a studio, a photographer will first build up the ambient light. He will have some reflectors. That would be the dome, created on day 2. He'd create the ground, day 3. And then he would use a hot light, which was the sun. And it's this hot light that gives us our shadows. So the ambient light doesn't create shadows. And that's the world we live in. Right? Now, how it works in a photographic studio, it is how it works in the real world. An artist who paints this understands that he's looking at not just the light from the sun, but ambient light, hot light from the sun, and shadows. So here's a shadow, right? The sun is in front of you. If the sun was the only light source, then everything on this side would be dark. But it's not, because there's more than one light. Look at this man in a cave. This is what our world would be like. There's the light, right? If that's the sun, everything this side must be in total darkness. This is not how we see the world. This is how we see the world, because there's the light of day, which God separated into night and darkness. He separated that light. So don't ask me how, and don't ask science how, because they don't know how. But reality is, this is how we see the world. There's a dome that reflects light. That's why we see the clouds like this. And there's the sun, which creates shadows on the clouds. Where's the light coming from? Well, it's coming towards the horizon because of the dome. Light is being refracted all around. You live in light, but the sun is what creates the shadows. So let's have a look. If I have Burj Khalifa, here's the tower. There's my light source. If I take a planar surface and I raise it up, I would see the shadow of the building because the sun is above that building. The aeroplane would cast a shadow on that planar surface. So when we saw the shadow of the Burj Khalifa on the clouds, this is what is happening. And if you are underneath, this is what you would see. So look and think. So from this side, remember the shadows would taper towards the horizon. And if you're on the other side, it would taper in the opposite direction. Now what they're saying is that when the sun sets, the light is shining on the bottom of the clouds. Do you ever see aeroplanes' shadows on the bottom of clouds? The building shadow would be upside down, the other way round, if what they're saying is true. So this is complete nonsense. Right. We don't see shadows behaving this way. Right. The shadows would be upside down. So we've been lied to. Right. So the sun is always above your head. The sun is always above the buildings. That's why it casts shadows like this. The sun is above the balloon. At sunset, you'll never see the shadows of the balloons cast underneath the clouds. It's impossible. Your shadows are always on the ground at sunset, because the sun as it moves away, it looks like it's going to set behind the horizon, and when it moves away, it disappears out of your eyesight view, which is called the vanishing point. It's the limitations of the human eye. So they're going to try and convince you that light bends. So let's look at that. Here's an image. Does light bend? And does light travel? See, the mirror's bent. Right? So what's happening here? Does light actually travel? Now we speak of light traveling because that's what we've been taught. So let's look at bendy light. And it's a lie. Right? If light is bending, then it will be distorted. So we can see a light being displaced, but is the light actually traveling? Or no? We see images where they are. We see the pencil where it is. There's no distortion, there's no bendy light, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to read what's in a magnifying glass. So the magnifying glass displaces the light, but is the light actually traveling? Well, no. Look at this image, right? You see the birds where they are, and you see the light bulbs where it is. Right? The light isn't going anywhere like a moving bird can fly from this place to that place. You see the man where he is. You see this man where he is. What are they telling you in this image? Right, this is from Pink Floyd. That light doesn't travel. Light doesn't move. You see things where they are. This is common sense. So we've been lied to. Right. So we need to question what we are told. So this is how we see the real world. Now I want you to think a little bit more. Clouds are always flat on the bottom. So this disproves what? And this proves gravity. Tells you they're lying about gravity. Right. So where is the invisible chair holding up this cloud? This cloud is sitting on something. If gravity was real, this cloud would be on the floor. So clouds is sitting on something. The cloud is sitting on something. So what is it? So a boat will sit on water. Clouds, they say, will sit on air. So it's buoyancy and density. Now we're going to look at some images, and I want you to draw your own conclusions, ask your own questions. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then you decide what the answer is yourself. So let's start. Look, I've got a balloon. I fill a balloon with a bit of water. That balloon will float, and it will flatten out the same as a cloud does. If I heat that water, then that balloon will sink. So it has something to do with air and the heat. So now the air itself. How can air hold up a cloud? See, there's a problem. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Right. The flat earth is surrounded by a dome and by liquid. So a fish swims in liquid. We'll all agree. Now I'm going to ask you two questions. The air that we breathe, is it a gas or is it a liquid? And can a bird fly in gas? So what do you think? So look at the visuals, ask your own questions, draw your own conclusions. Cheers and thanks for watching.